Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Green Bay Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Good Morning Lambeau. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. You can email us, PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. You can text us, 865-658-5824. Join alongside Tim in a snowy Green Bay, I'm sure. Still a little chilly out there. Tim, did you ever stop shoveling snow last night, sir?
I did for a little while, and then I got up at 6 o'clock and did it some more this morning. So we're all dug out. We're good. We're good to roll now.
Good deal, man. I know it was rolling through there, and man, it looked beautiful on everything I've seen on social media for sure. The practice yesterday was really, really awesome to see. Hope we get a few flurries there for Monday Night Football, obviously. So we're going to dive into all the topics that are going on across social media this morning, as well as some of the statistics from a team standpoint. We'll also dive in a little bit to the Saints-Packers PFF preview as well, as we were kind of talking about the point spread. My goodness. Point spread is 14 as it sits right now, but we'll get into all that. We'll get everybody's takes in the chat as everybody files in. Appreciate y'all making us a part of your morning here on December 20th. This glorious Friday as we're ready for the weekend. First thing, all right, let's just jump into it, man. Here, let's get it started. First things first, Nick McSwain in the Patreon group, absolutely hilarious. He says, "I've never seen Caleb Williams and Saddam Hussein in the same room." Just saying. As you can see the old diagram of Saddam Hussein in the rat hole or whatever they called it. Some of you guys probably too young to get that joke, but the stuff that Caleb Williams does on the field, Tim, is just mind-boggling to me. This is what we talked about coming out of college: climbing into your mother's arms and crying, late planking on the field as if you're just devastated, right? Then, of course, you got this, one of our favorites, right? But we just need to put a compilation together of everything that Caleb's done all year long with these kind of looks. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, every time I see it, it just makes me more grateful for Jordan Love. You know,
Right.
I'm just so grateful for J Money.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. He's Caleb, he's an interesting character for sure. And listen, he may end up being a great quarterback. We've talked about that, right? But this is the negative aspect that we talked about all through the draft process. That's why, like when we were going into the draft, my opinion was if I was Chicago, I would have called Washington and been like, "Hey, do you want Caleb? We got similar grades on both. We'll let you we're going to take him, but if you guys want to jump up and grab him, we're just as good with Jaden as we are Caleb." I guarantee you Washington would have been like, Caleb's got a lot more hype around him, this and that. If you pick up an extra 4th-round pick, right?
Yep.
And then you pick up an extra pick, climb down, you get Jaden Daniels. I felt like Jaden Daniels and Caleb were neck and neck from a talent standpoint, really. Like, I didn't look at Jaden and be like, he can't do what Caleb does. It kind of felt like they were both about the same. And Jaden, to me, leadership, social IQ, basically, awareness around people, around teammates seemed extremely high as comparatively speaking to Caleb. And I think that's a real thing in the league. I don't know. So
happy for Jaden Daniels that he didn't end up in Chicago.
I bet he is too, Tim. I bet he is too. Goodness gracious, man. And when you look at the playoff picture here as it sits right now on December 20th, obviously we'll focus on the NFC here. The Detroit Lions are the 1 seed, Philly 2, Tampa Bay 3, LA Rams are now the 4 seed. You've got the Minnesota Vikings as the 5 seed, the Packers as the 6, and the Washington Commanders as the 7 seed as it sits right now. So if the playoffs were to start today, the Detroit Lions the Detroit Lions would get the first round bye. Washington would travel to Philadelphia to play the Eagles. Okay, that would be a hell of a matchup, I think. I think we got that one coming up this week, Tim? Looky there, Philly at Washington. All right, There you go. So that could be a playoff preview. You would have our Green Bay Packers traveling to Tampa Bay, and then you have the Vikings traveling to LA to play the Rams. And keep in mind, guys, the Rams, this is not the same Rams team we face. They got both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp healthy. Matt Stafford playing some pretty decent ball. I'm pretty sure Kyron Williams is healthy. Really good running back there. One of the best running backs in the league. I think last year he may have led the league in rushing. So I don't like the idea of going to Tampa and playing the Buccaneers. They seem to be extremely hot right now. But at the same time, man, get in the dance. You never know what happens, right?
Absolutely. And I kind of disagree a little bit. I kind of want Tampa Bay, man. I want to return the favor. We've had some heartbreak at the hands of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in recent memory, both from, Tommy Boy Brady and Baker, Mr. Football, Baker Mayfield. I'd love to go down there and beat them in Tampa. I would. I'd absolutely love it. Either way, we're going to have to get past a couple of our nemesis here in order to advance. But I hear the logic though, right? You don't want to start your playoffs going down to Tampa, but I don't know. There's something in my mind that's telling me that I think we're ready for them, and it would be a huge, huge boost to get that first dub on the road against a tough Tampa Bay team.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. You get kind of battle tested right out of the gate. I do feel like between Tampa and LA, they're probably the hotter team, right? Now, LA, like I said, they've done their share of winning here lately, but and you can never rule out Sean McVay, youngest coach to ever appear in the Super Bowl, youngest coach to ever win the Super Bowl. So really says a lot about his coaching ability, no doubt. So that's how your playoff picture looks. Well, that's the other thing, too. If you look at the draft order, just to kind of keep your eye on it, as of right now, the Raiders have the number 1 pick, then the Giants at 2, Patriots at 3, Jaguars at 4, Panthers at 5, Titans at 6, Browns at 7, Jets at 8, Bears at 9, and the Saints at 10. So immediately when you look at that top 5, you go, okay, who needs a quarterback? The Raiders definitely need a quarterback. The Giants definitely need a quarterback. Patriots have theirs in Drake May. I feel confident saying that. Jaguars, whether they like it or not, pay Trevor Lawrence all that money. They're probably not going to go for a quarterback. Carolina Panthers seem to be pretty happy with Bryce Young and how he's turned it around since they've made some coaching changes. So at least 2, possibly 3 of the top 5 are going to be looking for a quarterback. I feel confident saying the Titans would be in the market for a quarterback as well. Maybe the Browns looking towards the future. Sooner or later, they're going to have to get rid of Deshaun Watson and just absorb that huge cap hit. And, of course, the Jets, you can't roll them out at number 8, wanting to take a quarterback, thinking about the future behind Aaron Rodgers if he does decide to come back for 1 more year. So, of course, the Bears at 9, they got their QB. Saints probably looking for their QB of the future too. So you've got multiple teams, at least half of the top 10 here, Tim, obviously needing a quarterback. And it really goes without saying, but there's a reason these teams are picking towards the top of the draft is because they don't have a quarterback. And they're, they don't have that CEO, that general on the field, especially on offense, kind of controlling the game.
Yeah, it makes it difficult to really advance your franchise, right? That's always the missing piece, and it can be the toughest one to get sometimes because you can take a guy 1st round, you can take a guy 5th round, 7th round, doesn't matter. There's no telling what you're going to get a lot of times, and as we see, like we were talking about Caleb, sometimes that all the success you find in college does not translate to the pro game. And we see that a lot with him. We've talked about it before, right? Running around, holding the ball too long, thinking that it's, college ball and that he can just dance around the field. It doesn't work that way when you play with the big boys, right? They get paid too. So, it can be a crapshoot trying to find that quarterback. That's why I'm grateful for the system that we have here in Green Bay, man. Draft and develop, take one when you don't need one. And, usher in another decade of plus of dominance by developing your young quarterbacks and not just, drafting a guy high and expecting him to just come in and play at the pro level.
All right. Definitely. All right. Let's get into the chat here real quick. Nick McSwain says, I've seen people say that Josh should sit out to the playoffs, even if he's cleared to play. I get the sentiment, but the last thing we'd want is Ja to miss 9 weeks worth of live reps and be rusty. It's a great point, Nick. And we've kind of went back and forth on this. For me, if he's not 100%, don't put him out there. If he's 100%, put him out there. That's the way I feel. If it's 99.2%, I don't want him out there. I don't want any more, and I don't want to say excuses like Ja's making excuses, but I don't believe he is. I'm one of those people that doesn't think there's an underlining, we've explored it in here. We've allowed the fans to talk about it and kind of hit on their comments. But like last week, he did not meet their test requirements. So we can say he's 100%, he's full participation, all those things. But when they did the mile per hour test, he did not check out. So until he does that, I don't want him on the field. That's the way I feel about it. So that way, if you do bring him back, Tim, and he has another setback, you as an organization did every damn thing you possibly could. You already feel like you may have rushed him back in that Chicago game earlier in the year, and that's probably what caused a little bit of this. And when people say, well, the PCL is different from the existing injury, no, everything ties together. Typically, you'll have a PCL or an ACL go because something else is hurt and you're kind of overcompensating with the joint, right? Whether it's a hammy or it could be a calf, it could be a strained Achilles, could be any of those things, right? So, but how do you feel here? I kind of, I don't know, man. I agree but disagree with Nick in a sense of I'm not saying we should sit him out. Just, hey, let's just hold him to the playoffs. I think when he's ready to go, I want him out there. What about you, man?
Yeah, I feel the same way. And, I'm of the logic too, like, this time of the year, not many guys are 100%. How close can you get? But, with Ja, with the, the back and forth and the setbacks, I think you have to look at that a little bit differently. And you want him as close to that 100% as you can. And then, get him back on the field. But, keep an eye because it would do the team no good. It would do Jair no good to, rush him back. And then he has a setback and then we lose him for the final, push. So, I don't want to say handle it with kid gloves, but you certainly have to take things into consideration, considering how much it took for him to see the field, before when he had initially tweaked it. And then we brought him back and now we haven't seen him for, what is it now? 4 games, five games, something like that. We're going into, the 6th week here. So if it's going to be another game, you're going to miss another game, at home against the Saints. If that means that we get you for the Vikings and the Bears and the playoff push, then I'm all for it.
Yeah. Nick McSwain in the chat says, also according to Pack-A-Day Podcast, Packers are tied for first in number of sacks since the bye week. That doesn't surprise me, man. They've been on a heater, no doubt. And again, on this show, we don't just look at the numbers. It's not just hey, here's where the sack numbers are. We look at the tape and we take everything into consideration. We look at the PFF grades. We go watch the tape ourselves. We look at the stats. We look at it mainly through next gen stats. In my opinion, is better than PFF because PFF is like got this big curtain pulled as if like, hey, we're not going to show you how we came up with this. And NFL Pro is like, here are the plays that we chalked up as this pressure, as this, right? So you've got the video evidence, obviously, to back it up. So that doesn't surprise me, though, about the sacks there. Packer Backer says, we should be leading by a mile with the quarterbacks we've faced since then. I got to push back on that, man. You guys know how I feel about this. I'm not a big DVOA guy. People will prop up DVOA in week 3, and then by week 11, that week 3 number didn't even freaking matter. I'm just of the opinion that the league is what it is. You got the top talent in the world playing this game, even with the worst team in the league. You can only play the guys on your schedule. But I will say this, Packer Backer, the Packers, according to PFF, have the 4th toughest schedule in the entire National Football League. So only 3 other teams that's played a tougher schedule than the Packers, according to PFF. So this whole – I don't like any statistic personally that since this week, we'll hit on it. People talk about it, so fans talk about it. We're always going to put it on the show. But when you start trying to cherry pick certain windows, both positive and negative, it's like, oh, I can't take that, man. Like, what's the entire body of work? Yep. You'll start off the season. Let me give you an example, like the Chicago Bears. I remember when they won like 3 or 4 in a row, and everybody's like, oh, here it is. The media was, boy, they were high horsing the hell out of that. We told you guys this is the team. And then you get to, and if you were to look at it at that time, maybe DVOA was suggesting they're one of the best in the league. I don't know what it was exactly. But now you get to the end of the year and you look at the teams they actually beat. They're all garbage teams. So it's like, you can only play your schedule, right? But that whole hot mode of those 3 or 4 games in a row, I think it might have been 3. It may have been 4. But whatever it was, Tim, everybody was just like, the Bears have arrived. And then all of a sudden, the Hail Mary in Washington and right to the ground. So I don't know, though, man. Like I said, when you talk about, well, look at the quarterbacks we faced. Geno Smith, one of the hottest quarterbacks in the league going into this game. They've won 4 in a row. We were talking about how he's, the 8th highest graded quarterback according to PFF. So depends on how you want to look at it. You got anything to say there, Tim? Anything on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I get the logic and the mindset behind it, but it's a team game, team sport. Quarterbacks are your face of the franchise, and obviously you can't win without one. But there's 10 other dudes on the field at the same time that have a job to do, and I tend to look more at the matchups. The offensive scheme versus the defensive scheme and the teams. Obviously you have to consider who's under center. But, I mean, we just spent time talking last night about Spencer Rattler, who I don't think anyone in the world is afraid of right now. But it's somebody that you can't write off because any given Sunday someone can have a game. So I don't really look at, we face this quarterback or that quarterback. It's more about the teams and the matchups.
No, definitely. Ron Sandwell in the chat says, 16 sacks since the bye, leads the league, like Nick said. All right, so confirm that. Nick went on to say 14-point spread is crazy. I was expecting like 6 or 7. That was me, Nick. I was thinking like around 9.5, something like that, right? Because typically you want the public to have to choose between a field goal or not is really what you're trying to get that line to. And, when I seen 14, I was like, holy cow. And again, it's mainly geared towards trying to get the money close to 50% on both sides. So you're trying to handicap this in the sense that people want to bet on the Saints. It'd be hard for me to pass up on 14 points in any game in the NFL. And we know how Matt LaFleur likes to call a game. Once you get to the point where it's, hey, the clock's now your enemy, he loves to just drown out the noise of you took your foot off the pedal, man. We're trying to win a damn ball game. And what gives us the best chance of winning this ball game is playing that clock now, as opposed to let's go continue to wing it around, give away 2 or 3 interceptions, 2 or 3 turnovers in the second half. Next thing you know, the team's, breathing down your neck. So I said this to Tim offline as we looked at the 14-point spread. I don't bet on Packer games because there's too much emotion involved for me, and I'm damn sure not going to bet against the Packers. But if this was any other game in the NFL, I'd be
you're taking the 14.
I'd be really enticed. I'd probably tease it to 14.5, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Maybe even 15, just to kind of get that extra point and a half, what have you. So, but Tim, I know where you stand on this, man. This is this is the definition of a trap game if you ain't careful, man.
Man, I'm telling you. And the Saints, they're a team that is, they're playing for nothing right now, right? They're playing for development and pride and trying to just get a win, a morale type boost kind of win with a banged up team. They'd probably love nothing more than to come into Lambeau on a Monday night and, screw up the Mark Murphy appreciation party. But I think the Packers are going to get it done. I think it's, not to oversimplify it, but I think if we play our game and we execute and we don't, get caught up in the nonsense and make any foolish mistakes, we should walk out with a victory, regardless of what the point differential is and the margin is. I think we're still going to get the dub.
Got it. Let's see here. Rel in the chat says Olave was on IR for concussion. His 21-day window was opened yesterday, and Rashid Shaheed is done for the season. All right, so the injuries just continue to factor in there with the Saints. And again, their playoff hopes are pretty much, they've been over for a little bit, right, Tim? Let me look at the standings here real quick just to make sure.
Believe they're officially out, right?
Well, anytime the comment covers up where they're at on the rank, on my good side, they're 5-9. They're pretty much done. They're probably have been. It doesn't have the E, but they're on the cusp of being eliminated. So they're, from an organization standpoint, they're probably wanting to see some of the young guys anyway. So if there's any kind of question on whether someone's healthy or not, hey, put them on IR, get them back next year. Let's end it out and let's see what our young guys can do. And the thing that we're talking about in terms of you can't overlook any team in the league, even though their season's pretty much done. These young guys, listen, they're trying to play to be on the roster next year, but also if they do get cut, they want, when they hit free agency, for people to look at the tape and go, man, that dude really turned it on at the end. So you get a collective group, Tim, at the end of the year doing that. That could be a recipe for a very competitive game that otherwise might not have been.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We see it all the time in the preseason, right? The casuals hate the preseason. Oh, it's preseason. It's like, I love preseason. You see a bunch of young guys playing every down like it's the Super Bowl, and they're trying to make a team. That's kind of going to be the vibe, I think, with these role players on the Saints that are trying to maybe, like you said, find their way up the depth chart or audition for a new role. Possibly in free agency or in the trade market. So, yeah, and it's kind of a wild card too, because if you've got guys that are playing that haven't played a lot, we don't have a lot of tape on them. You're going to have a lot of unscouted looks at some of these players and matchups. So, like I said, we got to not take this team for granted or this game for granted, thinking that we're just going to get an easy win over a banged up, kind of bottom of the barrel type of team. We can't have that mentality. We have to respect them like any other opponent and just go in there and execute, get the win.
No, completely agree. All right, up next, let's see here. Brambo in the chat. Good to see you, buddy. He says, if we play Tampa, I'll be there. That's what's up, man. Let's go. You know what? I could probably pull that one off too. Playoff game.
Oh, here we go.
All I got to do is mention, Mandy, you want to go to Florida? Oh, it don't matter what we're going to Florida. Let's do this. So she's all about it. Rel in the chat. Tampa's the only team I'm worried about in the playoffs. I can see that, Rel. Listen, recently been kind of in the playoffs. And again, what was it? They put up like 41 points last week or something, Tim, I'm thinking, right? So they're definitely on probably playing their best football of the year anyway. So let's see here. Ron Sample says Josh should come back as soon as he's cleared to make sure he can make it through a game. I think that's a fair point there too, man. Get him out there on the field as soon as he's 100%. I think it would be very, very important. Randy Cleaver says, I hate to say it, but Ja might be done. So he's thinking Ja may be done in Green Bay. Carlos Silva, good to see you, buddy, here on X, says Ja needs to play at least the last 2 games. So he thinks it's important for him to get in the last 2 games. Josh Vallantingham, I showed up late to the party. All right.
Sorry. How many times are you going to come to my press conference late?
Better late than never, Josh. And Nick McSwain, y'all know people are going to blow a gasket if the Packers don't win by 3 tuds. LOL. It's the most frustrating part about this fan base, man. It's like,
I know.
We try to mentally prepare people too. Like, hey, look, this is a possibility. We do understand, right, that we're not just going to boat race every team we play. And you're going to drop some that you should win. That's the NFL.
Yep.
But I think Nick hit the nail on the head here, Tim. It is frustrating to see fans still dogging Matt LaFleur after we literally have 2 games, back-to-back 30-point games.
It's frustrating to see fans that find a way to be upset after a win. And I don't get it. I'll never understand it.
Yeah. But, that's what makes the world go round, right? I'm with you. It frustrates me too. But, it is what it is. Let's see here. Rel in the chat says, I just think as long as our defense continues to play like it has, Nick, I don't care what the score is. Yeah, it's a great point. You know what? Let's look at the defensive numbers real quick, Tim. Let's take a quick peek at this. If we can get this adjusted to where I don't know how I screw this up every single day. Hey, that ain't too bad. Maybe not.
I think we got an update to the software too. I see some new buttons in here.
Bro, if anybody hates change, it's this dude right here. I'm just telling you, I would be on a horse and buggy. I would be that guy that would have been like, we don't need these damn cars. Get them out of here. We're fine. So let's go full screen. Maybe that'll make it a little easier. So this is according to NFL Pro, Next Gen Stats. This is a look at the defensive rankings team-wise. Let's start with pass defense. Actually, let's go summary first, all right? And let's just kind of see where we're at. Yards per game allowed overall. The Packers are currently 10th in the league at allowing 320.4 total yards per game, okay? When you go yards per play, which I think is a little more accurate depiction of how well your teams play, they drop a touch. Yards per play, maybe they didn't drop as far as I thought. Where are we at here? Uh-oh, Tim, it's happening. There they are, 9th. So they're 9th at 5.2, actually tied for 7th at 5.2 yards per play. All right, so in terms of yardage, a legit top 10 team there, total yardage. Touchdowns allowed. Let's see where the Packers sit. They're 12th, actually tied for 11th with 31 touchdowns allowed. If you want to go a little deeper and you go EPA per play, obviously the lower the number, the better. The Packers are 5th in EPA per play at minus 0.11. I mean, yeah, I haven't heard much complaining about the defense here lately, but if someone does, I don't know what to say. I really don't. I mean, you're talking about a team that went from, I felt like we were around 12 or 13 last year overall defense when you take points scored into consideration, yardage, all that stuff. Here we've jumped now to 5th as it sits right now in on December 20th going into week 16. Tim, this is what we wanted, right, man?
Yeah, change is only good if it's for the better. We made a change at DC, and we've seen improvement, right? And, I've been a big proponent of the belief that, if you're in the top 10 in your defense and your top 10 in your offense, or at least you're teetering around that range, you've got a chance to run at a Lombardi. I don't care who you are. I don't care what division or conference you're in. If you're relevant on both sides of the ball in at or near the top 10 categories, it gives you a shot to go. And we saw with Joe Barry's system for a few years that we kind of hovered just outside of that, right? We always talked about it wasn't as bad as we had always thought, but it could always be better. And I think with Coach Half and the changes that he's brought to the table here, you see this defense took another giant step forward. And now we've cracked into that top 10. And the way this offense tends to click, it's a recipe for success down the stretch. So I'm all for it, man. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, and then you go passing yards per game. The Packers are currently 15th. And again, I always talk about what do you prioritize as a more important statistic. For me, it's always going to be points. It's always going to be points. It's going to be red zone. It's going to be turnover differential. Turnover differential is typically the points allowed are typically a byproduct of the turnovers that you create, right? It typically, if you got a team that's top 3, top 5, top 10 in turnover differential, then, or at least forcing turnovers on defense, then you're going to have a low scoring defense for sure, in a good way, right? So yards, look, take all the yards you want, bub. For me, it's what's the score at the end of the game. That's where it really comes down to. That's what Hafley was saying early in the year, and there were people scoffing at him. Passing yards per play, the Packers are currently not in the league at actually tied for 8th in the league with the Vikings at 6 yards per pass attempt there. Okay. EPA per pass, the Packers are currently sitting 5th in the league at minus 0.13. Now we run over to the running game here. And when it comes to the running defense, rushing yards per game, the Packers are currently sitting in the number 9 spot at allowing 105 rushing yards per game. So a legit top 5 rushing defense. When you go to rushing yards per play allowed, the Packers are currently sitting in the 8th spot at 4.2. Okay. EPA per rush, the Packers are 11th at minus 0.08. And that's kind of where you sit there in the running game. So if we were to key in on the pass defense, that's really what got the conversation started here. Let's see where the pass rush is across the league, okay? So if we go to sacks, all right, total sacks, the Packers are 8th in the league right now with 40 sacks, all right? The Giants have 41, the Chargers have 42, as well as the Vikings and the Cowboys at 42, the Ravens at 44, the Texans at 45, and the Broncos are leading by a pretty good margin there at 51 sacks on the year. So again, when we watched the tape earlier in the year, we weren't, throwing up the warning signs here on this particular show, like, man, what's wrong with this pass rush? We weren't doing that because we were looking at the tape going, hey, man, you could see kind of how they're harnessing this pass rush. You could tell that they're keying in on the running game, right? You can also tell that they're really trying to control the rush lanes for the quarterback so the Tommy DeVito 2.0 game does not happen again. And if there was a chance of that happening, it was this past week against Geno Smith, who'd been running the ball really well out of the pocket. And you could tell, man, they really kept him contained in the pocket. They stopped the run, and then you kind of pinned your ears back from time to even when they pinned their ears back, though, we showed, man, where it seemed like there was a touch spy in the middle almost always, Tim. And it worked beautifully because it's designed to do 2 things: occupy 2 blockers, also protect against the rush lane, which you've seen Enigbare do that on that one of the 3-play sequence there. I think it was in the 3rd or 4th quarter where he just dominated that whole sequence. It's huge, man, to be situationally aware rather than we just need more sacks. The sacks will come, and they have.
And you see it on this list, right? I mean, you've got it organized by sack total, right? I mean, there's a lot of teams on this list that they're not going to even sniff the playoffs. You got the Jets, you got Arizona, the Giants. I mean, my goodness, what a dumpster fire. Dallas having a terrible year, and you see the sack numbers. Well, if the rest of your defense isn't getting things done, who cares? Who cares if you're getting sacks and losing ball games? I like the fact that we're kind of in the middle range there, and we're playing better defense and we're winning ball games. So I'll take it.
Yeah. And then when you look at sack percentage, right? Sack percentage, we're actually tied for 8th at 7.5%. And there's 2 teams above that at 7.6%. That's the Commanders and the Eagles. So sack percentage, obviously the Packers are top 10 as well. When you look at overall quarterback pressures, and of course, there's where it crashes. All right. Give us just a second. We'll get back to that. We'll go back to the season leaders. Let's go pass defense, and we were going pressure, right? Overall pressures. Quarterback pressures, the Packers are a little lower on the list. They're 22nd with only 163. Now, this is typically where you guys know in the past, I've always said, hey, look, the quarterback pressures are what's most important to me. I would much rather have a team with a higher quarterback pressure rate as opposed to a lower sack number, although the sack number is higher than it would be otherwise, right? You want to make sure you're consistently putting pressure on the quarterback. If you hit home, great. But again, pressure, pick, coverage, sack, that type of mindset is huge. Now, that's overall quarterback pressures. When you go to quarterback pressure percentage, however, let's see where the Packers sit. I think they climbed up the list a little bit, do they not? Nope, they're 28th at 30.5%. So in the past, when people have said, oh, where's the sacks, though? Where's the sacks? Got what we wanted this year. Much higher sack number, right? Much higher sack percentage, but the pressure percentage went down. So it's kind of give and take there, It's interesting to see they kind of flipped from last year. And the big number that keeps changing is that turnover differential, right? That's been the big, big difference. And I know it's slowed down in the last few weeks, it seems like, although last week I think we got 2 turnovers. But boy, starting this season off hot with that turnover differential is really why the defense carried the load here for the Packers early on. So
that and limiting the explosives, right? We talked about it. And I think overall, especially the second half of the season, the Packers have done a really good job. A few chunk runs here and there, those kind of things. You're not going to win them all, right? But overall, man, I think we're doing a great job of limiting the explosive plays, and that's what's allowing us to be in these games and, win ball games.
Yeah.
And, creating turnovers helps with that, right? Make any opponent think twice about trying to push the ball if every time they're throwing it, you're getting picked off by Xavier McKinney or Edrin Cooper. So, it's a good thing. We're ball hawking defense. That's the biggest difference that I've seen with Coach Hafley coming in here. These guys are playing for that football. Every play they're trying to punch it or rip it out. Absolutely aggressive when it comes to getting after that football, and it shows in the turnovers. It really does.
Yeah. All right. The time to the pressure. Okay, the team average time to pressure. I think this is a really cool statistic. Now we know this because there's GPS tracking to determine when they get within. I think it's 2 yards or maybe even closer to the quarterback. And I think I want to say they take the measurement like so many hundreds of times per second too. So it's like just constant information as they close in, so they can truly get it down to a fraction of a second. The Vikings lead the way at 2.50, but the Packers are in the top 10 at 2.64 seconds to the pressure, and they're actually tied for 7th, showing them sitting in the 10 spot. But they're tied for 7th there with the Bengals, the Eagles, the Giants at 2.64. So we are getting to the quarterback. And again, guys, this isn't just the last few games. This isn't cherry picking. This is over the course of the entire season. So obviously the pressure has the results have caught up with what we kind of seen early on. And now you're really starting to see everything click. Now, don't be surprised if you revert back to the first of the year and that pressure rate goes down a little bit, the sacks start to go down a little bit. It just depends on the opponent you're playing this week and what the game plan is for stopping that opponent for sure. So, all right. And this is what's really cool. We talked about this, right? You're a legit top 10 in pressures, right? When it comes to, sack percentage, obviously time to the pressure, all those things. Well, how often do we blitz, Clayton? Because when you blitz, those numbers are going to go up, right? The Packers have blitzed 5th least in the league at 18.1. Actually, they are, 5th at 18.3%. So we're doing this without blitzing. I challenge people to go back 5-6 weeks and look at all the articles that were written on this very thing right here. The Packers can't hit home with four-man rush, right? And then you look up, we've got one of the top 5 lowest blitz percentages, which means we're just bringing a 4-man rush or less, right? And here we are still hitting home in the top 10 with sack numbers. So
that's why when you see Barry, when you see Hafley dial it up when he, Mike fire or he, nickel blitz, something like that, you see how disruptive it can be because, teams are not used to seeing that. They're used to us just, rushing 4 and stunts and twists and those kind of things, creating pressures. And then when you add a 5th or a 6th or you load that box, it's really more for that offense to handle. And it's because you're not using it all the time, right? And there's teams that are real blitz heavy and then there's teams that aren't. I like that Hafley system seems real even keel. We've seen it before in games where he will just dial up the blitzes and it'll be one after the other and then we get away from it. And it's like it keeps a balance. That's a attribute of a good aggressive defense, but also playing discipline and being smart and not just selling out with a blitz every time.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's look at yak over expected allowed. Okay, now obviously we'll go to the lower number will be the better the defenses. The Packers have really controlled the yak. They're 7th at plus 125 as it sits right now. So that's the big thing is like controlling what the receiver does with the ball after it's caught. Right. I don't get too caught up in the depth of the throw. I know some people like to kind of cherry pick those stats. Like, well, they're not even throwing the ball down the field. Well, if it's working, why would you? Why would you?
I just caught the ball.
Thank you, Romeo. So, the name of the game is limiting the explosives. And to me, when you look at the yak OE here, that's what I see, Tim. You're really limiting the explosives because, again, an explosive play triples your chances of scoring on that drive, and an explosive play in the passing game is passing plays of 20 yards or more. Feels like the Packers. I would love to see that number updated. I haven't seen it anywhere lately. I would love to see the explosive play count allowed for this defense because I guarantee you they got to be top 10, Tim. Probably top 5, to be honest with you.
Yep. And we talked about that maybe being a concern going into the season, like, hey, if this defense is going to play a lot of man, get ready for a lot of explosives. And we haven't seen a lot of man. We've seen man coverage looks. But again, getting it's tough sometimes. I've looked at it. You and I have had that conversation several times that it's not man, it's match, or, it's disguised on purpose. I think if we were in a situation where we were playing a lot of cover 2 man or cover 1 man, we probably would see more explosive plays. So again, much to Hafley's credit, we have an aggressive defense without just playing man all the time. I see you got the coverages here. This looks great.
Yeah, so the Packers they've climbed again. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are now 6th in the league in EPA per dropback. And when you look at the coverage breakdown, cover 3 zone 32% of the time. Second would be cover 2 zone 26% of the time. And there's been a lot of great breakdowns on Twitter. We break it down on Chalk Talk all the time. It's not just showing a shell and running cover 2. You're actually showing the safety rotated down and then they rotate out. And they'll even mix in, sometimes they'll show a deep safety, a mid-level safety kind of playing that spur, ball snap, both safeties rotate down and the corners drop back in that invert 2. That's still a cover 2. So cover 2, 26% of the time. We're running cover 2 zone, Tim, more than any other defense in the league is what this graphic is showing us. So, and we are definitely in the top 10, maybe the top 5 in cover 3 zone. No doubt about that. So,
and then look at the man coverages, like we were saying, 0% cover 2. We're playing cover 1 17% of the time, cover 0 3% of the time. So roughly 20% of the time you'll see man coverage looks, which is, in my opinion, it's perfect, right? With this system, it's perfect. You sprinkle that in enough, keep them on their toes, and then go back to your bread and butter with us, which is definitely cover 2 and cover 3 zone.
And sometimes when they sprinkle it in, it'll be against teams that want to attack outside breaking routes. And the reason that cover 1 man, which obviously the Packers are running 17% of the time, is so effective against outbreaking routes is pre-snap and even post-snap read, you're saying middle field close. We can't take the post. We can't take the skinny. We can't take the shot. So let's attack outside. And when you play cover 1 man, whether it's a drop, a hole, or a robber, what will happen is your corners will play outside leverage. So they're in a position to make a play on those outside routes. So, and again, I love, like you said, Tim, that you got to sprinkle it in. But our bread and butter, man, I mean, we're at 32% cover 3, right? So that's with the cover 2, that's 58%. That's 66. And then when you throw in this cover 6, that's 66. That's 77%, right? If I'm looking at this correctly. 77% of the snaps you're in zone defense.
That's definitely more than
65%.
65%. That's what it sure is, Mark. So this is kind of the things that we talked about, man, going into the year, right? Like, I'm still mind-boggled how many people who do this for a living were talking about how how it's going to be press man, very aggressive man coverage, this and that. And I'm like, boys, I don't know what we're talking about here. Like the team that runs the most man coverage is the Lions defense at 40%, right? They're under 50% man, and their media members making it sound as if we're going to be running 70%, 80% man coverage. Like that's not a thing in the NFL. It's not been. I don't know if it's ever been, to be honest with you. Even when Bill Belichick ran a ton of man coverage during those championship years, because they played that bullseye system, I don't know if they cracked 60% man coverage ever. So, we'll keep an eye on it for sure. But I think it's awesome, though. Like I said, EPA per drop back, man. Packers pass defense is humming. Hafley's got these boys. They're peaking at the right time too, man. They seem to be playing some pretty good ball. So. Yep. Let's switch over to run defense real quick before we wrap up hour one here. And then we'll go to Twitter and kind of comb through because there was something I wanted to hit on Twitter that was somewhat pertaining to this. I know what it was. It was just a video here that Cody Krupp put out. Make sure you guys go give him a follow at Cody W. Krupp, a great follow on Twitter. Feels like every practice Packers DC, Jeff Hafley and consultant Robert Saleh are having a long warm-up session chat. And I just put out zero ego on the coaching staff. I love that Hafley has welcomed that too. And Matt LaFleur did a great job being the CEO of the organization, Tim, going, he's going to be helping me on offense. So don't even ask about Jeff Hafley, right?
Brilliant, right?
And then less than a week later, Hafley does a presser and says, I want any information Saleh's got on the defense. Boom. Now you've got a green light for any kind of criticism or advice. And listen, anyone who's got a decent social IQ understands that unasked for advice will always be perceived as criticism. Matt LaFleur took any threat away from Jeff Hafley, and then Jeff Hafley, being the non-egotistical coach that he is, said, I welcome it. That's how you handle it, man. That's people skills 101.
It was perfect. It set the tone right away. It showed everyone, both in the building and outside of the building, that it's Jeff Hafley's defense. Bob Saleh wasn't brought in, to help first-year coordinator Jeff Hafley. No, he was brought in to consult and to be somebody in Matt LaFleur's ear on that offense. Filling him with some defensive knowledge and his opinion. And look at how this team has played since Mr. Saleh's arrived to Green Bay. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, the proof is on the tape, and I think that's a good formula going forward. It makes both sides of the ball better. And, we'll see what, if any type of role he's going to have long-term after this season, whether that's a, assistant coaching position or, something like that. But I like the formula they've got right now. I'm perfectly happy with it. Let's go bring Lombardi home. Let's do it.
Yeah, sure. All right. That's going to do it for hour one. For those of you listening on the pod, we'll see you on the other side for hour two. We appreciate y'all.